Hey there, have we met before? This is Scott Howard, also known as ScLoHo, with a fresh episode of the Genuine ScLoHo Media and Marketing Podcast. I record these just about every week at the Federated Media Studios in Fort Wayne, Indiana, where I work for WOWO, that's WOWO Radio, and a couple of our sister stations. And this is an ongoing collection of media, marketing, and personal insights that I've been sharing in podcast form since 2017. This is an audio version of my latest article that I publish at my website, scotthoward.me. Altogether, I published over 1,600 articles, and this one is titled A Fresh Introduction to ScLoHo. So here we are, smack dab in the middle of summer of 2025, and I've been meeting new people and reconnecting with older friends, and a common question is, what do you do? Well, the short answer is, I help businesses and organizations connect with potential customers and clients. And that begs for more detail. So today, I'll dig in and reintroduce myself. First of all, I'm from the 1900s. That's a fun way of saying I'm older than 26 years old. I actually started working in media as a teenage radio disc jockey at age 16, and I've worked in and on the radio for the next 10 years. At age 26, I moved my family to Detroit and started working in the advertising side of media, specifically to write and create radio advertising campaigns for businesses and organizations on radio station WMUZ-FM. During the nearly 8 years that we were there, I also returned to the airwaves, either as a fill-in or host or a morning show host. And I also had my first adventure in sales. When we returned to Indiana, I also returned to on-air, doing either afternoons or mornings full-time at a Fort Wayne radio station for about a year. Then I left the business for a few years and worked what I called real jobs. I can drive a forklift, I ran a tool crib, I even set up a barcode system for a manufacturing facility, and ran a thermoformer as some of the jobs that I took during that time. I also did some part-time on-air work and was paid a few times for commercial voice work when I returned to Fort Wayne. 2003 was when I returned full-time to the world of media and marketing. By this time, on the personal side, I had 3 kids and 2 stepkids and was a couple of years into my second marriage that is still going strong. By the way, my wife and I are still good friends with my previous wife and her husband, but that's another story. So in 2003, I'd been in Fort Wayne again for a few years and joined a group of radio stations as a member of their 12-person sales team. Over the next 8 years, the stations went through various ownership changes. I did some management work at the stations and eventually got bored and left. From 2011 to 2013, I took 3 different positions, each lasting 10 months before I decided that that wasn't what I really wanted to do. I did website development sales, radio ad sales for another group of radio stations. Then I managed the social media for several brands of a multi-million-dollar e-commerce company. By the end of 2013, I had returned to radio, specifically Federated Media and their news talk radio station WOWO. I was the 5th person on a 5-person advertising sales team. That last seat on a team often is a revolving door, but not for me. By 2019, I was leading our sales team, and in 2020 won the Salesperson of the Year award for the entire company. 2020 also saw me change from selling to leading our sales team as the WOWO General Sales Manager. By 2022, my management duties grew to include some additional stations, Big 92.3, 1380 The Fan, 98.9 The Bear, and continuing with my duties as a general sales manager for WOWO. Finally, at the end of 2023, I hired myself back to sales, and they brought in someone else to take over most of the management duties I've been doing for nearly 4 years. Now, I know I haven't mentioned the origin of ScLoHo yet, but I will in a moment. The past couple of decades, I've been able to help business owners with their advertising and marketing of their business. Sometimes this includes an advertising schedule and campaign on the radio stations I work with. However, I've been able to help many more that never spent any money with me because of what I've given them that wasn't radio advertising. See, it started when I was 26 years old and began working with the local business owners in Detroit. I got to know some of the ins and outs, the challenges and successes, and I learned so much from these people. Working for WMUZ and their parent company, Crawford Broadcasting, was my continuing education as I helped create ad campaigns for, there were some auto body shops, mortgage companies, some doctors, transmission repair companies, retail stores, and so many others. I also read some excellent books by people like Harvey Mackay and Trouton Rees, and a few others that helped spark the creativity and common sense approach to what I call human relationship marketing principles, which I apply to the work that I do now. Now, it's not that I'm some great guru. It's just that I've been given some opportunities to not just listen to others, but to apply what I've learned and repurpose these concepts. No matter what the medium, there are timeless principles that should be applied to your business's marketing. Many times I look for ways that the businesses that I'm working with can make adjustments that will cost them little or no money. Sometimes it's obvious to me, but not to them because they are in the thick of it all and need an outsider's viewpoint and experience. That's the kind of stuff that led to the creation of ScLoHo. Now, initially, ScLoHo was just an email address that I created. Not as common as Smith or Jones, but by name, Scott Howard is not uncommon. I know personally another Scott Howard here in Fort Wayne, and no, we're not related. So what is ScLoHo? ScLoHo is a mashup of the first two letters of my first name, middle name, and last name. ScLoHo. If you pronounce it with just two syllables, you say ScLoHo. So around 2004, I started a couple of blogs. The first was a personal blog to capture random thoughts and ideas, and the other was to save and share some media and marketing ideas. I got permission from a couple of online publishers to include their articles as long as I credited them and linked back to their website. By 2008, I was writing and publishing over 25 articles a week to my blog websites under the ScLoHo name, along with working full-time at the radio stations that I was at. In 2011, I left those radio stations I've been working for and joined a website development company, and one of my friends and coworkers challenged me to combine the online ScLoHo with the in-person Scott Howard and marry the two with a fresh website. The .com version of Scott Howard was taken by another Scott Howard across the country, as were a couple of other domain possibilities, so I settled for scotthoward.me, scotthoward.me, and launched that website in October of 2011. I was able to make many of the previously published articles from the ScLoHo blogs and move them to the new website. ScLoHo is still my nickname. My wife calls me that every once in a while, as do some of my friends. And my ScLoHo email address is both a personal email and for anything not related to my work at WOWO and Federated Media. When I started blogging a couple of decades ago, there were a few other local people who were also blogging. A blog was the written equivalent of having your own podcast these days. Many of those early bloggers have since stopped. Either they lost interest or they thought that a blog was a way to find fame and fortune online, and it really wasn't. And I personally wasn't looking for either. I was just looking for a way to save in the cloud some of the stories and articles and ideas from others and myself for future reference. Speaking of podcasts, in 2016, Federated Media wanted to launch a marketing podcast, and I was asked by my coworkers and my bosses to consider creating one since they were aware of my blog that I might have some experience in talking behind a microphone, which I did. March of 2017 was when I launched the Genuine ScLoHo Media and Marketing Podcast that you're listening to right now. And except for about a year when I was in management, I've been updating both this site, the website, scotthoward.me, and this podcast every week. When I was in management, I decided to update monthly in order to keep up with my other duties. So this year, by the time December 2025 rolls around, we will have surpassed 1,600 articles and over 400 podcast episodes. They are all free as a resource to anyone who's interested. My website does not accept paid ads, and any ads that you hear listening to the podcast are placed by the hosting company, not me. As we look forward to the rest of 2025 and the years ahead, feel free to reach out to me personally about nearly anything. You can email me. That email address is scott@scloho.net, scott@scloho.net. And if you have any questions about advertising and marketing that you don't know who to ask, you can ask me. You can email me at my work email. It's scott@wowo.com. That's scott@wowo.com.
Podcasts by Federated Media.